The tenant who owned the building. Margaret Whitaker had lived in apartment 1A of the Crestwood Arms for 38 years. To the other tenants, she was simply Mrs. Whitaker downstairs, the quiet widow who always held the lobby door open, fed the stray tabby behind the garbage bins, and never complained when the heat was slow to come up in January. She was 72 now, thin silver hair pinned in a neat bun, sensible cardigans from the thrift shop on Maple Street, wire-rimmed glasses that slid down her nose when she read. She still walked to the public library 3 mornings a week to shelve returns as a volunteer, even though the arthritis in her right knee had started whispering complaints. Everyone assumed she scraped by on Social Security and the small pension her late husband Daniel left behind after 34 years fixing elevators across the city. They were wrong, but Margaret had never corrected anyone. She liked the camouflage. The trouble began quietly, the way most family betrayals do. Vanessa, her only daughter, turned 41 that spring. Vanessa had always carried a certain brightness. Quick laugh, expensive highlights, Instagram posts captioned, "Living my best life." The brightness dimmed noticeably after she married Derek 4 years earlier. Derek sold luxury kitchen appliances. He spoke in buzzwords: disruptive, premium experience, scalability. Between them, they earned decent money, but their lifestyle outran their paychecks like a dog chasing a car it would never catch. They lived on the 5th floor of the same building, apartment Thse. Margaret had quietly co-signed the lease 4 years ago when their credit was still bruised from a failed restaurant venture. She never mentioned how much it cost her in stress every time the rent was late. For 18 months, the hints had been growing louder. "You really don't need all this space, Mom. At your age, a 1-bedroom in a senior building would be so much easier. Derek and I are thinking about kids soon. We could really use a bigger place, family proximity." Margaret listened, nodded, offered tea, changed the subject. Then came the interventions. The first one happened on a rainy Tuesday in March. Vanessa arrived with 2 women Margaret had never met. One carried a tablet and wore scrubs. The other had a leather portfolio and the practiced smile of someone who sells something intangible. "Mom, this is Dr. Patel. She's at Geriatric Care Coordinator, and Miss Lang from Sunrise Senior Living. We just want you to hear your options." Margaret set the kettle on. "I already have options. I live here." The conversation lasted 47 minutes. By the end, Dr. Patel was explaining how common mild cognitive slippage was after 70, and Miss Lang was sliding a glossy brochure across the coffee table. Vanessa cried, perfect, glistening tears that never smudged her mascara. Margaret said very little. She thanked them for their concern, offered more tea, and showed them the door. After they left, she stood at the window watching rain stripe the glass and thought, they rehearsed that. The second intervention arrived 6 weeks later. This time, Derek brought his brother Kyle, a personal injury lawyer who smelled faintly of expensive aftershave, and Vanessa's best friend Tara, who worked in real estate. They sat Margaret down and presented color printouts, floor plans of assisted living studios, monthly cost breakdowns, conveniently offset by projected proceeds from selling 1A's contents, even a timeline. 60 days to pack, Mom. We'll handle the heavy lifting. Margaret asked one question. And where would you 2 live afterward? A beat of silence. Obviously, we'd take over the lease here, Mom. It's rent-controlled. We'd be fools not to. Margaret folded her hands in her lap. I see. They left, feeling victorious. She could tell by the way Derek clapped Kyle on the shoulder in the hallway. The third intervention never happened because Vanessa decided to skip straight to the victory lap. She scheduled it for a Saturday in late June. The invitation arrived via group text. Surprise housewarming/family gathering at Mom's place, helping her transition to her new chapter, happy new chapter. Potluck style, bring your favorite dish and good vibes, 2 p.m. sharp. Margaret stared at the message for a long time. She had not agreed to any transition. She had not invited anyone. She had not even been asked. She considered canceling it, then she considered letting it happen and simply staying in her bedroom with the door locked. Instead, she made a single phone call. "Mr. Delgado, it's Margaret Whitaker in 1A. Yes, today at 2. I'd like you to come personally. Bring the folder we discussed last month. Thank you." At 1:45, she set out 3 trays: cucumber sandwiches, shortbread cookies, iced tea in a glass pitcher. She wore her usual cardigan, the navy one with the tiny moth hole near the elbow. She looked exactly like the harmless old lady everyone expected. By 2:10, the apartment was full. 43 people, more than she had ever had inside at one time. Vanessa's friends from yoga and book club, Derek's sales team buddies, cousins Margaret hadn't seen since Daniel's funeral, several neighbors who probably thought they were attending a goodbye party. A banner hung crookedly across the archway to the kitchen. "Happy New Chapter, Mom." Vanessa stood on a small step stool, the one Margaret used to reach the top shelf, and clinked a spoon against her glass. "Everyone, thank you so much for coming on short notice. Today is bittersweet but mostly beautiful. My mom is about to start an exciting new phase at Sunrise Senior Living. She's going to have activities, meals prepared, 24-hour staff, everything she deserves after working so hard her whole life." Polite applause. Vanessa's voice thickened with emotion. "Mom has been so selfless, but sometimes love means letting go. She's been holding on to this apartment for sentimental reasons, and it's just too much space for one person. Derek and I want to keep the family close, so we'll be moving down here once she's settled. It's what she would want." More applause. A few ahs. Margaret stood near the hallway, hands clasped, expression calm. Vanessa turned to her. "Mom, do you want to say a few words?" Every eye in the room swung toward her. Margaret stepped forward 2 paces. Her voice was soft, but carried clearly. "Thank you all for coming. I appreciate the sandwiches disappearing so quickly." Laughter, nervous, relieved. She continued, "Vanessa is right about one thing. This apartment is full of memories. Daniel proposed to me on that balcony in 1984. We raised our daughter here. I've watched the maple in the courtyard grow from a sapling to something that shades half the building." She paused. "But she's also right that it's time for a change, just not quite the change she has in mind." A puzzled ripple moved through the crowd. Margaret lifted her chin slightly. "Mr. Delgado should be arriving any moment. He'll explain the rest." Right on cue, the buzzer sounded. Derek opened the door. Ramon Delgado, regional manager of Crestwood Properties LLC, stepped inside wearing a carchol suit and carrying a slim leather portfolio. Behind him came Sophia Chen, the company's senior counsel, tailored blazer, no-nonsense ponytail, iPad already glowing. The room quieted instantly. Vanessa stepped down from the stool. "Who are these people?" Margaret answered for them. "My property manager and our attorney." Derek laughed once, short, disbelieving. "Your property manager? Mom, you rent here like the rest of us." Margaret looked straight at her daughter. "No, Derek, I don't." She nodded to Ramon. He opened the portfolio and spoke in the calm, measured tone of someone who has delivered difficult news many times. "Good afternoon. For those who don't know me, I'm Ramon Delgado, regional manager of Crestwood Properties LLC. Crestwood Properties LLC is the legal owner of this building, the entire 42-unit structure at 2847 Willow Avenue." He let that settle. Mrs. Margaret Whitaker is the sole shareholder and managing member of Crestwood Properties LLC. She has held title through various trusts and holding entities since 2006, when the previous owner defaulted and the bank auctioned the note. Mrs. Whitaker purchased it quietly and has owned the building ever since. A stunned silence. Someone in the back whispered, "What?" Ramon continued. Mrs. Whitaker has chosen, for personal reasons, to maintain very low rents across the building for the past 19 years. Many of you pay approximately 60 to 70% below current market rates, because she has personally covered the difference through reserve funds and careful investments. He glanced at Vanessa and Derek. Apartment 5C, your unit, benefits from that subsidy. As of this morning, that informal arrangement ends. Vanessa's face drained of color. Ends? Effective immediately, all units revert to fair market rent unless a new lease is signed under standard terms. For 5C, that represents an increase of approximately $1,870 per month. Additionally, your account is currently 93 days delinquent. The grace period I extended at Mrs. Whitaker's previous request expires at midnight tonight. Derek's mouth opened, closed, opened again. You can't. This is her daughter. I can, Margaret said quietly, and I am. Sophia Chen stepped forward, voice crisp. We have also reviewed the lease application Mrs. Whitaker co-signed in 2021. As guarantor, she has already been notified of the default. She has instructed us to enforce the personal guarantee only if payment is not received by 11:59 p.m. Otherwise, the matter will proceed directly to eviction filing tomorrow morning. A phone camera flash went off, someone recording. Vanessa spun toward her mother. You're bluffing. You live like this. She gestured wildly at the second-hand sofa, the chipped teacup collection on the shelf, the ancient rotary phone still plugged in by the kitchen. You volunteer at the library. You take the bus. Margaret's voice remained even. I like the library. I like the bus. And I like privacy more than I like showing off. Another flash. More phones now. Vanessa's voice cracked. You're ruining our lives over nothing. I'm removing a subsidy you never earned and never appreciated. That's all. Ramon cleared his throat. There is one additional matter. The building's master insurance policy requires full disclosure of ownership changes or material alterations in occupancy. Because the proposed move of tenants from 5C to 1A was never formally requested or approved by ownership, any damage or liability occurring during unauthorized occupancy shifts would not be covered. For everyone's protection, we will be conducting a full unit inspection of 5C tomorrow at 9 a.m. You are required to be present. Derek looked like he might be sick. Margaret turned to the room at large. I have no intention of raising rents across the board to gouge anyone. Those who have been good neighbors, paid on time, kept their places clean, I hope you'll stay. We'll negotiate fair leases. But the days of invisible charity are over. She looked back at Vanessa. You wanted this apartment because it was cheap. You wanted me out because I was in the way. You never once asked what I wanted. You never once asked if I was happy. Vanessa was crying now, real tears this time, messy. Mom, please, we're family. Family doesn't stage an ambush in someone's home and call it love. Family doesn't rewrite someone else's life because it's convenient. She nodded to Ramon and Sophia. I think that covers everything. The two professionals moved toward the door. Ramon paused beside Margaret. Anything else, ma'am? Margaret considered the crowd, some shocked, some filming, some already edging toward the exit with half-eaten plates. One last thing, she said. She reached into the side table drawer and pulled out a single sheet of paper, something she had printed that morning. This is a notice of intent to form the Crestwood Tenant Equity Fund. Any current tenant who has lived here more than 5 years and maintained good standing will be eligible for a one-time rent stabilization grant, enough to cover the difference between old rent and new market rent for the next 36 months. Applications open next week. The fund will be administered by an independent board. I will contribute the seed money personally. A murmur ran through the room, shock turning slowly to something closer to awe. Vanessa stared at the paper as though it might bite her. Margaret folded it again and put it away. Now, she said, there's still shortbread in the kitchen. Help yourselves. The party's over when you decide it is. She walked past her daughter, past her son-in-law, past the banner that now looked ridiculous, and stepped onto the tiny balcony. The maple tree rustled in the late June breeze. Behind her, the voices rose, confusion, argument, nervous laughter, someone saying, "Holy shit, she owns the whole building?" Margaret closed the sliding door. She stayed outside until the last guest left. When the apartment was finally quiet, she went back inside. Crumbs on the carpet, empty cups, the banner sagging like a defeated flag. She took it down, folded it once, and dropped it into the recycling bin. Then she made herself a cup of chamomile tea and sat in Daniel's old armchair. Her phone buzzed. Already a notification from the neighborhood Facebook group. Someone had posted the video. Title: Plot Twist of the Century at Crestwood Arms Today. The view count was climbing fast. Margaret sipped her tea and watched the numbers tick upward. She felt no triumph. She felt only relief, like a very long breath she had finally allowed herself to release. The next morning, the hallway outside Thse was taped off. Eviction notice taped to the door in bright orange. Vanessa and Derek were gone by noon, furniture piled in a U-Haul, faces tight with fury and fear. Margaret did not watch them leave. She was downstairs in 1A, sorting through applications for the Tenant Equity Fund. The first one came from Mr. Alvarez in 3B, a retired bus driver who mowed the courtyard grass for free every summer for 15 years. Approved. The second came from the young nurse in 4A, who always checked on Margaret when the power flickered. Approved. By evening, she had approved 17. She kept one name for last: Vanessa Whitaker Dunn. She stared at the blank line where the reason for request should have been written. Nothing was written. Margaret set the page aside. She would not deny her daughter forever, but she would not rescue her either. Some lessons only arrive when the safety net is gone. 2 months later, the Crestwood Arms was quieter and somehow warmer. Tenants greeted Margaret differently now, not with pity, not with distance, but with genuine respect. Mr. Alvarez brought her tomatoes from the courtyard patch he'd started. The nurse in 4A left a thank you card and a small potted basil plant. The building's Facebook group had a new pinned post. Crestwood Tenant Equity Fund first round recipients announced. 17 names. Vanessa's was not among them. Margaret still walked to the library 3 mornings a week. She still fed the tabby. She still wore the cardigan with the moth hole. But now, when people asked how she was, she answered honestly.